Chapter 46. I pressed my lips to the silken skin of her collarbone, damp with sweat, the salty moisture combining with her sweet, lilting taste, creating a slight tang against my tongue. The sun filtered through the blue curtains, reflecting the hue of morning sky over her body, as the waves embraced the shore outside. I listened as her heartbeat and breathing finally began to slow, savoring the tantalizing, addicting thrill of her response. She shifted slightly beneath me with a sigh, her hand stroking my head through my hair, her airy touch a breathtaking catalyst, provoking sensations through every nerve in my body. I stroked her shoulder with my thumb, and then trailed my fingers down her arm, her bare skin exquisite, my hand then falling and flowing into the curve of her waist. I stilled my touch against her hip, willing myself not to move, trying not to betray the wanton, unceasing passion I felt, even in this moment when she was still languid and sleepy. But as if sensing my thoughts, her hand trailed fire down my cheek, weightless fingers encouraging my chin to lift so our gazes met. I tried not to let my eyes reflect my need, but she knew. "Again?" she asked. Her face was tired but pleased, feeling weak yet extraordinarily happy. I rose up slightly, gently covering her body with mine, my lips meeting hers tenderly. "Yes," I murmured. "Again." "Poisonous?" I was jolted out of my memory by Bella's distressed shriek. I realized I was still standing in the doorway of the dining room, with who knew what kind of expression on my face. I refocused myself quickly to see her staring in horror at Jasper, who had his hand on Bella's shoulder and was trying to calm her. He looked up at me. "Sorry, Edward," he shrugged. "I thought she knew." I realized he had just informed Bella that our venom was poisonous to the wolves, that had she, purposely or not, bitten Seth, it would have killed him, even if we had been able to get her off of him. I sighed, giving Jasper a look, as if Bella wasn't already upset enough. His thoughts turned slightly indignant at my expression. "Well, seems like something she should know, if we're going to have dogs hanging out here all the time." He tilted his head slightly towards the front porch, where Jacob was listening intently. "I didn't know the bloodsuckers knew that," Jacob grumbled. "Sam is going to flip."
"So you mean that if I had bitten Seth or Jacob, I would have killed them?"
Bella's voice was still several octaves too high. "Well," laughed Jasper, "that's a heck of a lot better than the venom turning them into one of us."
"Damn straight,"
thought Leah from outside. Bella stared at Jasper with wide-eyed dismay. I walked swiftly across the room to her side. "Don't worry, sweetheart." I knelt down next to her. "They're just fine." She looked at me, irritation flashing in her crimson eyes. Jasper was keeping a steady flow of calm into her.
"How could you never have told me that?"
she growled. I glanced momentarily at Jasper, again thanking him for bringing this up at such a perfect time. "It just never came up before, love." Suddenly, the phone rang loudly. We all looked towards it silently. "See who it is, Edward," Carlyle said. He and Seth were coming down the stairs, Carlyle carrying a brace. "Caller ID," he thought. Oh, with Alice around, we rarely used it. I shot over to the phone and glanced at the display. Swan, C. "Charlie," I murmured. Bella sucked in a swift breath. Let it go again, Carlyle thought worriedly. It's too risky without Alice here to see what he will do. I nodded, walking slowly back to Bella. She looked at me with sad eyes.
"Oh, Edward,"
she said softly.
"My dad. What are we going to do?"
I sat next to her, rubbing her back gently. You know this can't go on, Edward, Jasper thought. We have to leave soon. Carlyle and Seth neared the sofa. Carlyle glanced up at me as he settled Seth down. Collarbone and shoulder, he thought. I'm going to brace it. Can you give me a hand, Edward? He said out loud. I got up and moved over next to Seth, holding his arm in the position Carlyle needed while he started to fix the brace to Seth's mammoth shoulder. Seth was keeping his face passive, but I could sense the pain in his mind. Seth, again, I'm so sorry, I said softly. I heard Bella grind her teeth behind me, apparently still thinking I shouldn't be apologizing. Really, man, it's not your fault, Seth said. Don't worry, it's actually kind of cool.
Should we call Sue?
Bella asked in a small voice.
I mean, can you still not go home? Because of the pack?
Then panic flared in her face, as if a sudden thought had just struck her, and she stood up quickly.
Wait, the treaty,
she gasped.
Do they know about me? That I've been changed? Will they attack when they find out?
Her eyes flew to the front porch, where Renesmee waited with Jacob and Rose, exposed. Oh no, love, I said quickly. That's all straightened out. As much as it ever can be. Bella looked at me with surprised eyes.
What do you mean?
She breathed. I started slowly, thinking where to begin. Well, firstly, technically we didn't break the treaty. Bella gave me a questioning look. Jacob, as Alpha, gave me permission to change you.
He did? When was this?
Bella said quickly, her face hardening slightly.
Why didn't you tell me?
I didn't get a chance, I responded. It was in the minutes before Renesmee was born.
Oh,
she said softly, her hand moving unconsciously to her flat stomach. She stared towards the front wall, relief and gratitude passing briefly across her face before being replaced by a grimace.
Thanks, Jacob, I guess,
she muttered, clearly not up to being too nice to him yet. Jacob laughed softly out on the front porch. And then Jacob went to see Sam, Seth said, to explain everything. Alone, of course. He frowned, still aggravated to have been left behind.
Really?
Bella said, sitting back down slowly. I could hear the interest peaked in her voice, and I smiled.
Then what happened?
I let Seth do most of the explaining of what had passed between Jacob and Sam, and then later between Sam and Carlyle. I saw Bella glance at me, a conflicted, tender look in her eyes, when Seth explained that I had refused to leave her side to translate for Sam and Carlyle.
Wow,
said Bella, when Seth finally stopped for a breath.
So will you be going back to La Push now, Seth?
No, said Seth.
Yes?
Yes, thought Jacob and Leah in unison. There was a small noise from the front porch, a light cry of protest from Renesmee. Bella stiffened, her face immediately filled with fear and yearning. She's just hungry, I whispered reassuringly, reaching out and taking her hand to pull her onto the couch next to me. Renesmee was squirming in Jacob's arms, her hand on his face, insistent pictures of him feeding her filling his head. The door clicked open softly, and Rosalie stepped inside.
"Feeling better?"
she asked Bella kindly. Bella shrugged, tilting her head to the side.
"I'm calmer,"
she said.
"but I still feel terrible about what happened."
Rose smiled and swept into the kitchen. I heard the refrigerator door swing open.
"Well, I certainly hope you aren't feeling bad about almost killing that reeking throw rug out on the front porch,"
she said breezily. The refrigerator slammed shut, and Rose carried the bag of blood over to the counter.
"God knows he deserved it. I wanted to do it myself when I found out, but—"
Her head suddenly popped into the room through the doorway, and she glared at me.
"Edward wouldn't let me."
She disappeared back into the kitchen. Bring it on, Ice Queen, Jacob thought. I tried to bite back a smile. Honestly, Rosalie, Carlyle said, still adjusting Seth's brace. Ow, Seth thought with a grimace. I felt a stab of guilt again, and the smile dropped from my face. Whatever my feelings toward Jacob and the imprint, Seth should never have had to put himself in the path of danger. Why couldn't it have been Leah? I mused. Bella owed her one for that rant the other day. I'm so sorry, Seth. I should have been closer.
"Seth,
Bella tried to jump in with an apology, a miserable expression on her face. She glanced with despair at Carlyle and then Jasper, and I knew, had she been human, her fragile skin would have been a deep shade of red. She still didn't seem to appreciate how we were all impressed by how well she was still holding things together, not upset. Bella, love, no one is judging you. You're doing so well. Don't worry, Bella. I'm totally fine, Seth interjected. Hand me that piece, Edward, please, Carlyle thought, gesturing to one of the final pieces of the brace on the table. I handed it to him, and he slid it into place. Seth winced again.
Sorry,
Bella whispered. I caressed her arm reassuringly. You should be, Leah growled from down by the river. Don't freak, Bella. Seth patted her knee. I'll be back to normal in half an hour. Anyone would have done the same, what with Jake and Nessie. Oh, shoot. Seth realized his error with the nickname. He tried to think of something positive to say. I mean, at least you didn't bite me or anything. That would have sucked. Bella moaned slightly, hiding her head in her hands, and I shook my head at him in exasperation. He grimaced. Sorry, I was trying to cheer her up.
I'm a bad person,
Bella mumbled into her hands. Of course you're not. I should have...
Stop that,
Bella snapped. Seth shifted awkwardly. Let's see. Lucky thing, Ness. Damn it. Renesmee's not venomous, 'cause she bites Jake all the time. Bella's head popped up. She does? Seth grinned. Sure. Whenever he and Rose don't get dinner in her mouth fast enough. Rose thinks it's pretty hilarious. He caught my eye, and I smiled back at him with a nod. Several emotions passed through Bella's expression. I suspected she was trying to suppress a smile at this revelation. Carlyle stood up. All set. Well, Seth, I think that's as much as I can do. Try not to move for, a few hours, I guess. I wish treating humans was this instantaneously gratifying. He was healing even as I worked on him, he thought. He was caught by a sudden memory of treating Jacob after the newborn attack, and he placed a hand on Seth's head, grateful that his injuries had not been as extensive as Jacob's had been. "Stay still," he said affectionately, and then headed up the stairs. He was anxious to take notes in his journal of everything he had observed of Bella today. Seth watched him go. "I can probably manage sitting still for a while," he mumbled with a yawn. "Yeah, I'll probably just rest my head for a minute." He carefully laid his head back, closing his eyes. "These couches are so damn soft," he thought, as his mind faded and blurred until he was breathing deeply, lost in sleep, looking very, very young. Bella was watching Seth with troubled eyes. Without looking at me, she got up and moved towards the back window. I debated for a moment, and then followed, not wanting her to feel alone. I took her hand and watched as her eyes followed Leah's movements along the riverbed. Leah glanced up, seeing Bella through the glass. "If you ever touch my little brother again," she fumed. She had wanted to come inside, but everyone, including Jacob, had thought she needed to stay out and calm down. There was a soft click behind us. Rose had gone back outside with a prepared bottle for Renesmee. She had had the good sense to wrap the bottle tightly in a dishcloth, and though Jasper and I both tensed, eyes on Bella, anticipating the smell of blood, thankfully none came.
"Give her to me,"
Rose said outside.
"I'll feed her."
"Just give me the bottle, Blondie," Jacob quietly growled.
"No, damn you,"
Rose snapped.
"I got it ready. I'll feed her. I'd let you hold her all this time. Consider yourself lucky."
"Let me," Jacob spat.
"Yes, let you. This is my house, and she is my niece, if you've forgotten, you damn vagrant."
"Listen, bloodsucker, I sighed, trying to shut out their voices. I wish they would keep it down. Bella didn't need to hear this. Her eyes stared straight out, her mind obviously far away. "Edward," thought Jasper. "She's getting tense." I watched her carefully, wishing for the millionth time I could see what was going on in her head. For a moment, I felt a flash of jealousy towards Jasper, that he could at least feel her emotions, whereas I was shut out completely. Why is that? I wondered despondently. Jasper met my eyes. "Still upset about the wolves?" His gaze was questioning. His eyes moved back to Bella, concerned, as her anxiety increased his own tension. "She shouldn't feel bad." "What's the matter, Bella?" he asked softly. He glanced back at me momentarily, and I gave him a nod. Cool calm swept up in his mind, relaxing his own body before radiating out into the room. Bella's tight muscles eased slightly. "No one is angry with you, or even surprised, really." "Speak for yourself," Leah snarled. "Well," Jasper continued, "I suppose we are surprised. Surprised that you were able to snap out of it so quickly." He smiled at her reassuringly. "You did well. Better than anyone expects of you." Bella took a deep breath and then looked at him.
"I was thinking of Charlie, actually."
"Ah," said Jasper. "To be expected," he mused. Outside, there was sudden silence as Jacob took note of the conversation.
"We really have to leave, don't we?"
she asked, her expression strained.
"For a while, at the very least. Pretend we're in Atlanta or something."
I stared at her intently. Many of the obstacles to staying in Forks had been removed. The treaty was still intact, and our greatest fear, controlling Bella, seemed to have been for naught. Her control was incredible. But secrecy remained our greatest foe. The rule of the wider world of our kind could not be upheld as long as Charlie remained such an immediate threat. "Yes," said Jasper. He was pleased that Bella seemed to understand the necessity of removing ourselves from the area. "It's the only way to protect your father and our family." Bella looked sad.
"I'm going to miss him so much. I'll miss everyone here."
Jacob's mind was working outside, his stress level high, his eyes attached to my daughter, drinking peacefully in Rose's arms. "I can't be away from her," he thought with despair. I realized then, as he did, that no matter where we went, Jacob would follow. Great, I thought irritably. Just great.